Hello and welcome to our first lesson on this new topic of respiration. Today we're going to have a look at some basics of respiration. The title for the lesson, as it would be for any other lesson, is shown on the board at the moment. I'd like you to write in your books, Energy for Life. By the end of this lesson you should be able to define what aerobic respiration means and recall its equation. You should be able to explain where the reactants for aerobic respiration come from and where the products go, and you should be able to compare the similarities and differences between respiration and burning. So before we move on, while you're writing the title, can you define what aerobic respiration means? And we'll save that so that it's on your PowerPoint and recall its equation. So the title is Energy for Life. These are the three questions you should be able to answer by the end of the lesson. Now I'm going to start with a bit of a grim story. At the moment there's a famous painting shown on the PowerPoint, and this is a painting of a scientist known as Robert Boyle. And what he had was a special piece of machinery, a glass jar, that could remove air from it. And what he did was he carried out a series of different experiments where he put a candle inside of a jar, sucked all the air out, and noticed that the candle went out. Once he did this, he decided to further his experiments and he started putting animals in there. As depicted here, you can see there's a pigeon inside here, a bird. And what he did was he put the bird inside of the glass jar and sucked out all the oxygen from the glass jar. When he did that, obviously the bird died, because now we know that we need air to survive. More specifically, we need oxygen from the air to survive. But at the time, this wasn't widely known. This was back in the 1600s. So Robert Boyle was a scientist who investigated this, and he investigated how removing oxygen from the jar killed animals. So we can start by saying that all cells in our bodies need glucose from food. Okay? So all cells in our bodies need glucose from food. Okay? We can say that cells use this glucose, so I've put that in red because it's important, and we can say cells need glucose for ... We can say growth, to make new substances, and finally for use in respiration. Respiration. And we can say for use in respiration. And that brings us to our first key word today. Our first key word is the term respiration. Now, respiration is a chemical reaction that releases energy from glucose. So we can say that respiration is a chemical reaction that releases energy from glucose. Okay? Now, the energy that is released from respiration helps cells to carry out processes that they need, and it also produces heat that makes us feel warm. So we can add underneath here by saying that the energy released from the glucose is used by cells and is released as heat energy that keeps us warm. Okay. Now, respiration is similar to burning. Okay, when we burn something and a flame comes off it, respiration is a very similar reaction. So we can put the subheading. We can put the subheading respiration. Respiration versus burning. And we can underline it. And from our lesson slides, from our PowerPoint, we have also got some images that I'd like to add. So comparing burning and respiration, the following image is found on the lesson slides, okay? If you look on the left, this is sugar being burnt. When we burn sugar, a flame is made, which is energy being released. On the right is a cell that is carrying out respiration and it's releasing energy, okay? So we can say both burning and respiration are using substances from the air to release energy from glucose. So this is sugar, it contains glucose and it's releasing energy from them. At the same time, they both produce carbon dioxide. So they both produce carbon dioxide. However, in respiration, there is no flame. But in burning, the energy is released much more quickly and there is a flame. So we can say in burning, comma, energy is released quickly, making a flame. And finally we can say in respiration the energy is released more slowly. So in respiration energy, so we should say in respiration, comma, energy is released more slowly. So, we've said that all cells in our bodies need glucose from food. This is because cells need it for growth, to make new substances, and for use in what's known as respiration. Respiration is a chemical reaction that releases energy from glucose. The energy released from the glucose is used by the cells, and it's released as heat that keeps us warm. Respiration is very similar to burning. They both use oxygen from the air, which we're going to talk about in a minute. They both use a fuel, in this case glucose, and they both produce carbon dioxide. The only difference is that in burning, the energy is released much more quickly. It creates a flame. In respiration, it does not release it that quick, therefore a flame is not produced. So, let's refresh our screen. Let's send it back to black. And we're going to start this slide with a key word. The key term or key word we're going to use is aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration. R-E-S-P-I-R-A-T-I-O-N. Now, aerobic respiration, it does have quite a long definition, is a process that releases energy from glucose in digested food. A process that releases energy from glucose in digested food full stop. And we can say that it needs oxygen from the air and carbon dioxide is produced as a waste gas. So it needs oxygen from the air and produces carbon dioxide as a waste gas. As a waste gas. Now, the word aerobic, I'm going to put this in red because it's important. The word aerobic means with air. So the word aerobic means with air. So in order for aerobic respiration to take place, it needs oxygen from the air. Okay? Without oxygen from the air, aerobic respiration will not happen. So we can write ourselves an equation or a word equation for aerobic respiration. So we can say a word equation. Oh, no, we need to add that back. So word equation for aerobic respiration. Dot dot. Now, any equation that we write always has reactants and it has products. So our reactants for aerobic respiration include, so I'm trying to think of a good colour to use, we'll use this one. So we've got oxygen, being added, so we use a plus sign, to glucose So these are our reactants. Any word equation always has an arrow. You do not put an equal sign, it is always an arrow. So the reactants oxygen and glucose, when added together, make the products carbon dioxide, and water. These are our products. Okay? At the same time in our word equation, I'm going to put this in a different colour, I'm going to put this in a darker orange, we get the release of energy. So we can put plus energy over here. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but because this isn't a substance we can hold, we don't add it in the word equation, but energy is released that is used by the cells. So for now, for the final part of this lesson, we need to think about where all of these come from and where they go to when they're made. So when your cells in your body are carrying out aerobic respiration, as they're doing right now as you sit at your desk or table, they need oxygen and glucose. The oxygen that your cells use comes from the air, and enters your blood from the lungs. Okay, so it comes from the air and enters your blood from the lungs. We can then say that the blood then delivers the oxygen to cells. So when you breathe in, your lungs take the oxygen from the air, put it into your blood, and your blood then transports it to the cells that need them. At the same time, I'm going to change colour so it's easy for you to see which is which. We'll go for this darker blue. Glucose is taken from your food. So glucose comes from food we eat, full stop. And we can say that the small intestine absorbs glucose into the blood full stop. And we can then say that the blood delivers glucose to cells. So blood then delivers glucose to cells. Okay. Carbon dioxide, which is produced in this reaction, is breathed out. We exhale it. So taken to the lungs, to be exhaled. The word exhaled means to breathe out. So when you breathe out, you get rid of this carbon dioxide. The water is used by cells, or urinated out, which is a posh word for saying you have a wee, or urinated out. Sometimes the water is also exhaled out. When you breathe out, water is lost. Finally, the energy on the end is used by cells and produces heat energy. Remember, this is not a substance, so we can't really add it to our word equation. So aerobic respiration is a process that releases energy from glucose in digested food. It needs oxygen from the air and produces carbon dioxide as a waste gas. The word equation for it is oxygen plus glucose, arrow, carbon dioxide plus water and energy. The reactants are oxygen and glucose. The products are carbon dioxide and water. Oxygen comes from the air. We take it into our lungs, which then moves it into our blood, and it then gets transported to our cells that use it in respiration. Glucose comes from our food. The small intestine puts it into the blood, takes it to our cells, where it's added to oxygen to create carbon dioxide, water and energy. Carbon dioxide is taken to the lungs and you breathe it out. Water is used by your cells, or you urinate it out or you exhale it, and energy is used by cells and produces heat energy. Okay? At the same time, I am going to add here as well in red that energy is not a substance, so cannot be added to the word equation. Okay, so you should now be able to tell me what aerobic respiration means and be able to tell me its equation. You should be able to tell me where the reactants for aerobic respiration come from and where the products go. That was all detailed here, the first two learning objectives. And the last one, you should be able to compare the similarities and differences between respiration and burning. Now, rather than going over the answers for the questions today, I've put the questions across 2 slides. So I would like you please to write out the question in your book, then have a go at it, then write out question 2, have a go at it, 3, 4. Use the internet to help you with your answers. Once you have done that, the answers to the questions are on the final slide. So once you've done all 8 questions, make sure you've written it out, get a different coloured pen, mark your work and make any corrections wherever necessary. If you have any questions about today's lesson, please comment below in Google Classrooms or send me an email directly. I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Until the next lesson, take care.